So now we're going to move to our presentations, and the first one is the budget planning presentation on special education.
So I'd like to invite up Dr. Natalie Doherty and Miss Melissa Estrella. Welcome.
No?
Good evening. I'm Natalie Doherty, this Assistant Superintendent for PPS, and with me I have Miss Estrella. She's going to start off the presentation for us.
Hello, good evening. So each year and throughout the school year, we continuously reference the New York State Continuum of Services. This helps us shape our current classes, support our students and their needs. So this is something that we're constantly looking at to shape our classes to our related service options. With that, New York State also provides us with a New York State approved schools, and those are highly specialized programs to meet our students' needs. We currently have students benefiting from the New York State approved school system. Not only provides smaller setting for our students, structured supports, but it also provides various avenues of academic, social, and emotional needs. And with that, while our students might not be within our school building proper, our level of communication with the New York State approved schools and families is constant. We are constantly making sure that our students' needs are being met. We're providing extra supports when needed. And moreover, we're always working with the families and schools to determine if the student is ready to come back to their home district.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about our personnel for 24-25 school year. As you can see by our graph, our numbers really haven't changed very much over the years. We're going to go ahead and recommend one special education supervisor, which is Ms. Estrella. We're going to recommend going into next year 24.6 teachers, special education teachers. Last year we budgeted, if you remember, 25.5, but we did not need another full-time person. We just needed one period every other day, so we were able to really hold back on that one person that we were anticipating. For those that don't know, special education meetings happen throughout the spring. So we're not done with our annual reviews until May, sometimes June. Sometimes there are meetings that are held even over the summer. So it really is our prediction for us, and things change all the time. You can think you're going into a meeting with one outcome, and because it's a committee and they're thoughtful discussions, things can change. So we make our best guesses about our personnel. So our best guess going into next year is 24.6 people. Our teaching assistants, this year we had to add one person in the last minute. We budgeted for 35, but we brought a student back from an out-of-district placement. So we saved on that incredible amount of tuition, but we're able to support that student with the teaching assistant in the school. And then one student just really, because of his disability, had some changing needs, and we had to add somebody this year. We were able to access some of our grant funds through the 611 grants in order to support those positions. Teaching aides, we have our teaching aides in the district. We only have 4 of them. They support both special education and general education. A majority of their work is done in special education. Our clinicians, we consider our psychologists and social workers in this line. So we have 7 of those. We're going in at 7 for next year. Our occupational and physical therapists, we have 1 full-time physical therapist, 1 full-time occupational therapist, and then a 0.8 occupational therapist that work K through 12 with our students in kindergarten through 12th grade, sorry. And then speech therapists, last year we budgeted for 3.49. We did not use the 0.49 this year. We are extraordinarily tight, so I'm going to recommend that we go into it again next year at 3.49. If we don't need it, we will not use it. But we are extremely tight with our speech and language services, support services. So our behaviorist, as you can see on my slide, we have been contracting with an agency through BOCES. That agency has served us well. It's always a challenge because they're outside people coming into our school and they have scheduled times. So if they have a crisis in another school, they may not be able to come to our school. Or if they have to be in one building and there's a situation in that building and they can't get to the next building. So we have, again, it's been as successful as it has been, which has been great for us, but we really believe that this coming change that I'm going to recommend by using our own person instead of a BOCES contract, somebody through BOCES, is going to serve our district better. On top of not having a behaviorist through BOCES, we do not, I checked with Ms. Figuerella, that we really get such little aid back on that service because of the type of service it is. I think there was a whole line, it's like, I don't remember the percent, but it was such a small amount that it really does not offset the cost. Last year we spent about $115,000 in behavior services. Behavior services are for students, a majority of them are on the autism spectrum disorder and require highly specialized parent training, highly specialized interventions, behavior plans, functional behavior assessments. So it really is a no-brainer for us to have our own person. We have a special education teacher who can provide the services. She is a certified behavior analyst. Her name is Megan Boyle. She is, I think that when parents hear this, they're going to be really thrilled. They know her work. She knows our district. She knows our students. She is so well respected in our community. She actually won that really nice award last year with the state that we recommended her for. So we're going to do a 1-year trial. We're going to post her position as a leave replacement so that we have 1 year to see how this works, see how she likes it, see how it fits for the district, and see, and certainly I'll report back to you at some point next year on how that's going. But that is my recommendation.
Natalie,
Sure.
the BOCES, the person we contracted with from BOCES, they were not here full-time.
No, they were not. They were here often,
Right.
obviously, and we had a couple of different people over the years, and this year we have 2 people, 2 different people. So,
But this would also give you consistency for, to schedule and to really know the students and know what their needs were.
absolutely,
And what the teachers needed in terms of training or support.
absolutely, and I also hope that some of our behaviors happen at recess. A lot of our behaviors happen during those non-structured times, whether it's on the bus or during recess or during lunch or during music. I'm hoping that these kind of consultant teacher services will align consistency with their behavior plans. Not only that, I honestly believe that she can help grow this program, and I think that there's an opportunity for the district that if we grow it and this works for us and we provide her services, specifically her services and the way she operates as a behaviorist, I really believe we'll have the opportunity to tuition in students in the future. I believe that it will attract students with a different level of need that we can provide. So I do think that it's an opportunity in the future, very much so.
Okay.
Natalie, I'm sorry, you may
Sure,
have mentioned this and I
please.
missed it, I'm sorry. She will be K through 12?
She'll be K-12, yes.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question about what?
Of course.
We talked about that currently we're spending about $115,000 on BOCES services that are not consistent, they're not every day, they're not all
Correct.
day. Certainly, I'm under the assumption that if one behavior specialist can't come from the contracted BOCES support, that another one is sent, so it's not that consistent person. In contrary to spending the $115,000, how much would it cost us to be able to bring on this behavioral specialist, and what would the difference be?
So I don't have Ms. Boyle's, I don't have the current salary, but I can certainly get you that information.
So it's an existing staff member who will be taking over. So that right there would be a wash. What the difference would really be the salary of whoever takes her
Of who's
position.
taking her position.
So we typically budget about
Correct.
$100,000, which covers salary and benefits for a new employee.
Okay.
So that's
Right
that's
off
the
the
number
bat.
we would have in the budget.
Right.
Right
so-
off the bat, it's 15,000.
So right off the bat, we're saving
Saving
money,
money.
getting more of a service. So I just want to make that super clear to the public.
Super clear.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for doing
Yep.
it. Yep. Thank you. So,
Okay. So, future goals, right? Post-COVID considerations are reshaping special education in New York State. This year, one of the guidance memos that New York State provided to all schools is to consider increasing graduation age to 22 for students receiving special education services. Now, with that being said, it's either meeting graduation requirements or continuing on to age 22. The way we would do that is through a committee on special education meeting to determine if that's appropriate or not for each student. But that is something that we're closely monitoring and watching to support our students as they move forward to age 22.
Now Melissa, you said that's a recommendation, so
It's a mandate.
okay.
Yeah.
Just to be,
Sometimes the state likes to use the word guidance.
Yeah, it was called guidance.
okay, all
I
right.
just
Well,
want to jump in 1 second.
Us educators got to know to read between the lines.
It is a mandate.
Okay.
What is a recommendation is that we let them finish either on their 22nd birthday or in the year in which they turn 22. Most districts, including ours, have decided that at their 22nd birthday, they will exit their services, provided that they are connected with other agencies and a post-secondary plan.
Right.
And it does have, so I think the biggest impact that this has on a budget is ultimately 1 year, right? So those students that normally fall off, and then the preschool students who enter in, it's sort of, they tend to even out your numbers, so to speak. I mean, I don't like to talk about children in terms of numbers, but in terms of students, we have maybe 2 or 3 students who end with us and 2 or 3 students that may have higher needs coming in. So they sort of balance each other out in terms of budget-wise. So really for 1 year, we feel it, and then it becomes part of our budget cycle. Because of our student enrollment is down, a lot of our costs are able to sort of stay fairly even, and just with the standard incremental, increases that are across the region. But I did really want to make that part clear.
Okay.
And to that point, the third bullet there, skipping the second bullet, looks at smaller classes over a 5-year projection. So what that means is over the next 5 years, we will continue to monitor our preschool incoming kindergarten students to be able to provide the needs that they require when coming into kindergarten, but not only just kindergarten year, looking forward all the way through graduation. And what does that mean for Putnam Valley, and what services can we provide that is highly specialized? Part of that piggybacks onto what Dr. Doherty was saying about the behavior intervention specialist as well. With that being said, back to the second bullet, right now, 14% of our Putnam Valley population now utilizes various portions of the continuum to support their academic, social, and emotional progress. While we always strive to meet the least restrictive environment, we have seen an increase of academic, social, emotional needs across the region, and this is really a result of the post-COVID era, if you will.
Now, is that normal? Is that an average, if you look at districts in our area? Are we high, are we low?
So I think we're fairly average. We've always been average. The average used to be about 13%. We always hovered around between 12.9 and 13.1% in general. I think everybody has seen an increase. A lot of our building level supports, fortunately for this district, are strong. So especially at the elementary level. So we have a lot of pre-referral strategies that we can use. And if we see growth and progress during those interventions, it's an indication to us that we shouldn't classify a student, that they're making progress, it just, they needed a different service or they needed more support. So fortunately for us, we're not as high as many other districts have gone, but it is a little bit higher than normal and certainly is an increase for us in terms of our services. I think the biggest number of an increase that we have seen over the years is our students that struggle with mental health concerns. And we've talked about that through various meetings that we've had. I would say that is where we see the biggest need. And I would say that is regional.
And is that, if you had to pin the cause, I know it's easy to say COVID, but is it we test better, we're more aware, we're more observant, where parents are more concerned?
I think a lot of social media, I think that if you ask parents, a lot of it is around social media and general anxieties and depression. Yeah, I would say that those are the biggest things.
Okay, thanks.
And our goals will continue as they do each year to seek out specialized reading.
Can you speak up just a little bit more?
I'm so sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
Each year, we seek out specialized reading programs for our teachers to take advantage of to support our students within K through 12 programming. We are, as Dr. Doherty mentioned, exploring the consultant teacher services and various means, such as the behaviorist supports. So we will continue to explore new options to enhance our programming as we move forward.
So here we are at behavior interventions again, and that 5-year projection. What we do see is we know who our 3-year-olds are, right? We know who our 4-year-olds are. So we see the needs for those smaller classes, those 812 students who are in these specialized programs within our district and that are going to need these supports in the coming years, for sure. We know who they are, and that's why it's really important for us to do a constant 5-year projecting out. Those needs can change. Generally, they don't change drastically, but it gives us a good idea about what services we're going to need, and I think that having Ms. Boyle provide these kind of consultant teacher services, using her behavioral skills, is going to allow us so that if one year we have a smaller cohort of our 812, we may be able to bring students from the outside into our programs because we have somebody who specializes in sort of aligning our smaller class programs. So I think it's a real opportunity. And then CPSC, our increasing needs, we see for sure across the state. Our CPSE students, sorry, let me.
We say it.
I will. I didn't change that one, sorry. Committee on Preschool Special Education. So this is our preschool services. We see a sharp increase in needs in terms of the disabilities and what they look like and their needs. New York State Education Department is certainly moving towards, as you just heard Dr. Luft, is moving towards districts being entirely responsible for preschool, both for universal pre-K. Many districts are starting that. As Dr. Luft said, a few weeks ago, we met with one of our attorneys talking about whether or not we should be looking at creating our own contracts for preschool providers, whether or not we can redo our request for proposals for our other local agencies, if they can use our classrooms, looking at different options to start that. But what we are going to be held responsible for, regardless of universal pre-K, is 4410 services. And 4410 services is the preschool portion of special education. That is OT, PT, speech, and SEEIT services, special class services, special class integrated services. So we are going to be held accountable in the coming years for those services. We are already held accountable, but it's usually through other agencies. So how it works is the county pays for a portion of it and the state pays for a portion of it. And then we generally go through agencies or through the county providers to service our students. In the coming years, even right now, we're faced with a shortage of physical therapists, occupational therapists, and speech therapists. Some of our students in Putnam Valley have not gotten physical therapy since September because there's such a shortage, and because the state has not changed their rates. We're still going to be held accountable to provide those services. So whether that is becoming a 4410 program, which I am completing that application process at this time, and then supplementing the income, or I'm not even sure how it's going to work. We're still, attending state conferences, and the answer seems to be a blanketed, you're accountable. So we don't really know what that means, but I'm assuming I've been doing this long enough to know that we're going to have to supplement those services in order for our students to get services. So that is coming down the pike, and I think that everybody should be aware of that. And then
Sorry, jump in real quick. So that piece that Natalie just spoke about, that's a universally broken system.
It is a
right?
broken
It's not
system.
a Putnam Valley issue.
Right.
It's not a Putnam County issue. It's not a Westchester. It's a statewide issue. At every meeting I go to with superintendents, there's conversations about how are we going to handle the services that these students are not receiving, and what options do we have? And I think Dr. Doherty pointed out, we don't provide the funding, the county and the state do. That number is not sufficient for what these providers can get from anywhere else, and therefore they're not interested in servicing what is really our neediest population. Right? All the research shows that if we address some of these issues early on, the students are more likely to not need them into the future. So it's something that we're keenly aware of, but I would want to point out something that all districts are struggling with, and again, requires advocacy at the county and state level to get that funding up. Because we probably have some of our staff that would be willing to do it, but they would be doing it at a price that's far less than what they otherwise would receive for doing services for our students within their contract. So that we run into issues there. Thank you.
And I'll just talk about my last bullet, which is the mental health needs of our students. I know in Mr. McCarty's presentation and with the board, we discussed the need of a school counselor. I cannot stress enough how much that could help our students in terms of proactive work, getting in there, getting into classrooms, meeting the needs of our students before they become so needy that they're have to be classified and receive mandated support services. I'm hoping that those types of building level supports that we're building will be helpful. And then I also just want to report out on Cove Care. As you know, Cove Care has a satellite clinic out of our high school in the evenings. It's 2 evenings a week from 3 till about 7 p.m. We now have a waiting list, so clearly the need was there. It took us a couple of years. I partnered with Cove Care in order to do this. We're hoping to add somebody, but it is certainly a challenge to find a second person, but we are in the process of looking for people. So we're hoping that we can increase those supports for our students in this community. And they serve just Putnam Valley students. And we're thrilled that it's full because we're meeting some of our students' needs, but now we're building a waiting list. So, any questions?
Is most of it the lack of people out there or lack of money to pay the people that are out? Like, are
I
there
think it's
people out
both.
there, but there isn't enough money, or there aren't enough people?
I think it's both. I think it's both. I think that
If you pay them a decent
it's
salary,
fairly
they feel
attractive to some people. I think that I don't really deal with the salary end of it because it's Cove Care. It's really Cove Care that is paying them. But I think the location, the time, and the money are all issues to finding people right now
And there definitely is a shortage of behavioral health specialists.
of mental health workers for sure.
But if they paid a decent salary, I'm sure they would attract many more individuals. That's the problem.
They're not out there right now.
They're just not out
They're
there.
not
I think
there,
that the schools, I mean, the conversations that I'm
definitely a
involved with my local colleagues really are, these colleges are really trying to beef up their programs to provide more providers. But generally, these programs, like a speech and language pathology program or a social work program, they tend to be small programs. Like, I think Mercy's social speech pathology program was like 35 graduates a year, or something like that. Like, it was so small. So regionally, there's just not a lot. But I think that they're trying to beef up their programs at the post-secondary schools. Any other questions?
Can you talk about the summer programs and the staffing for that and the
Sure.
implications?
Sure. So our extended school year program, again, it sort of goes back to our meetings are just starting to happen, our annual reviews. We run a specialized program for our smaller self-contained classrooms. Our students who regress over vacations, who would regress without the services over the summer. That is who our extended school year service is for. Anybody who we determine, and we use a lot of data to determine whether or not a student progresses, whether that's over a week break or a long weekend, and definitely over a summer break. So we generally run K through 12. There's usually 3 to 5 classrooms, am I right? 3 to 5 classrooms. They're usually our smaller classes, 812s. Sometimes we offer specialized reading services over the summer if we really believe that a student is going to regress so significantly. But that's who we service over the summer. And we'll continue to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have a question about the TAs.
Sure.
We have a wonderful amount of TAs, and my question really is about, now that we're trying to bring a behavioral specialist on board, and the TAs are probably working with the students mostly who need those services, will there be training embedded for TAs and aides with that particular person for things like recess and more unstructured times of the day?
Yes.
Okay,
So that is one of the things that I'm most excited about, is that it will be consistent training for our TAs, hands-on training right in the classroom, right at recess. For our monitors, who every exit interview that I have done over the past few years from our monitors who take other jobs or leave, every single one of them said, I just wish I had more training. And it's really hard to do because lots of times we're hiring them, in August for September start, because we don't always know our needs. It's a position that tends to change. So I'm really hopeful that using Ms. Boyle's services right out on recess, providing that training, hands-on training, is going to be so helpful. Our bus monitors,
Right.
who really would love to know how to deal with certain behaviors. I think that this is an opportunity that everybody's going to feel it in a positive way.
That's great. I also just want to commend the district because for the special education rate to not have increased as much as more than 0.5% or 1% is, in this time that we're in, amazing. And I think a lot of that is attributed to the MTSS work that the district has been engaging in, which is multi-tiered systems of support. Margaret talks about it all the time, catching kids early to be able to give them what they need so that they never arrive to that place. So kudos to your team for doing that. And then lastly, I just want to know about how can we as a board advocate for the funding to be able to raise that level of salary for specialists, for speech providers and OT and PT.
For
like,
preschool.
what is it that we need to do to make some noise about the fact that this seems to be a common theme, that the state never gives us enough money for the task at hand, right? It's been a long time. I'm not saying that we're going to change Rome in a day, but I think that we need to do more. We need to make it known that our children, for a child to not have been getting a service in September, I have a really big problem with that because if that was my kid, I'd be standing on that side of the microphone. So
Absolutely.
I think that we need to really figure out what we need to do about that to make sure that that's happening.
Absolutely. So I am going to be attending some local forums, so I will pose that question and certainly come back with what we can do. I think that Kate Millman, with the state, she gave a presentation a couple of weeks ago. I think she's going to be doing another one soon. That's where I'll pose the question.
Great, thank
So
you.
I will.
If there's something we can do.
I think the scary part is how little the district has, what little oversight we have, right? You're talking about 3 and 4-year-olds that do not attend our schools. We're talking about programs that provide these services that don't happen in our schools. And we're talking about a funding that doesn't come from our schools. But the only piece we get to own is the accountability to make sure all those things are happening outside of our schools. So there's, other than advocating for relief, there's very little that we can do internally to fill those gaps that exist.
So two
And
things.
the other thing that's happening in many districts, if you need to send a child out to a specific program, those programs are
full.
booked and full
They're
for
full.
months. So
Months.
now what happens?
Yeah.
It's tragic that they're not getting the services that they need, but there's more clients than there are
And it's-
programs out there.
And the sad thing is, by the time those children who have these complex issues get to our school, if it's not remediated,
Right.
their mind is already shaped, and it's that much more difficult for our staff and the district to work with these children, and it's criminal. It's criminal. I
So
agree.
so
What you
Kate
said,
Millman,
Crystal.
who did this presentation, she's the preschool regional person or state person. She did a survey, like what were the major issues, and that created a Wordle. And every single slide she did was like funding was like the biggest, part of the Wordle.
Agreed.
So I don't know what more we have to do regionally to scream at the state to let them know we need help. We need help for our youngest students.
Yeah.
And without changes from the state and that kind of support, it won't change.
Yeah.
And then the second part, I do want to just say thank you to Ms. Estrella. She really has so much input and so much work on a lot of our she runs all of our Committee on Special Education meetings and has really earned the respect of our teachers. And so to your point about our classification rate, it's always a tricky balance on when do you classify and when do you continue on building level services. And Ms. Estrella and the teams of our teachers really are so incredibly thoughtful about that process, and I appreciate that very much from all of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
I just
both.
wanted to quickly compliment both Natalie and Melissa for their leadership over our special education department. I think we have a fantastic program. I'm always amazed by the services we're able to provide students, the services that we could render in school, which many other districts would send their children out to an out-of-district placement to receive that same level of service. And it's truly miracles that happen in many of those classrooms. And what our teachers and teaching assistants are able to do under Natalie and Melissa's leadership is really something special to see, and directly saves money for our taxpayers. Right? It is far more expensive for us to send students out to be educated than it is to provide those services here in Putnam Valley. So thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.